When you think of Doctor Who, you probably imagine a quirky alien with a goofy grin, a time-travelling blue police box, and endless cosmic adventures. It's a show that's known for its optimism, its whimsicalness, and its amazing imagination. But nestled behind the jokes and the sonic screwdrivers, Doctor Who harbours something much darker. Something that lurks in the shadows, just out of frame. There's a reason generations of children have watched this show from behind the sofa. Because Doctor Who, despite its family-friendly branding, looking at you Mickey Mouse, has always been a horror show. Yes, it's science fiction, yes, it's a British institution, but behind the adventures is a legacy of psychological terror, body horror, and existential dread that rivals some of the more true, serious horror franchises. This essay will peel back the layers of the whimsy and the nostalgia to explore the show's long-standing relationship with horror. From gas mask zombies to memory-erasing creatures, Doctor Who hasn't just flirted with horror. Oh no, it thrives on it. And you just haven't noticed. Hi, I'm Dan from Bartlett Media, and you may know me as the trailer guy, but you've probably never seen my face unless you've seen some really old music videos I did for university and my college, which, are still on the channel if you scroll down far enough, so I'd recommend you watch them because they're really good, if I do say so myself. But today I wanted to try a different kind of video. I wanted to try a video essay, so this is what this is going to be. And hopefully the start of a new series with trailers and video essays intertwined into this channel. So with that being said, please grab a drink, sit back and relax. It's time to delve into the Doctor Who horror. Doctor Who is a show that parents and kids can both watch at the same time. But it's always been pretty scary. Not just jumpy or silly scary, but the kind of fear that sticks with you. That's because I feel the series works on two different layers of fear. For example, you have the primal fears that get under the child's skin, and then you've got the more existential fears that you wouldn't really pick up unless you were an adult. And that is something that I've started to notice on my rewatches of episodes. I've been watching the show basically every week since 2008, and the Christmas specials before that. But some things used to scare me as a kid in the show. For example, the faceless people from The Idiot's Lantern, the Autons, and for kids, the scares are visceral and direct. Statues that move when you blink, a child whose gas mask has become his face, shadows that kill you if you step into them, and even losing your own. So this show tackles the fear of losing your own identity, including your face, your body, and your sense of self. These are simple but powerful fears, rooted in the unknown, and Doctor Who doesn't dilute them. It embraces them, and turns bedroom anxieties into monsters that stick with you for life. But the older you get, the more you realise the scariest things aren't the monsters. In fact, it's the ideas behind them. I don't see the Weeping Angels as creepy because they just move when you don't look at them. I think they're creepy because they take time away from you, they take your life, and time is one of the most valuable assets we have. And the gas mask child becomes a harrowing symbol of the wars in 1920 and 1940s, and even today because there are wars still going on. Free Palestine. Episodes like Midnight and The Waters of Mars aren't just scary because of jump scares, although the prosthetics in Waters did really scare me as a kid, like the fish mouth things they've got and the cracked skin. It was horrifying. But the episodes are scary because of what it reveals about people. It tackles paranoia, guilt, impossible choices, and the crushing weight of responsibility. And these stories make it clear that the true monsters aren't the ones in the rubber suits. In fact, the monsters are us. What makes the show so effective is how it balances both types of fear, sometimes in the same episode. Take the Series 8 story Listen, for example. It starts off as a stereotypical monster under the bed, but it soon turns into a meditation on how fear shapes who we are. And that's the heart of it. Doctor Who doesn't just use fear for shock value, it uses it to teach. It tells kids and adults alike that fear isn't something to run from. In fact, it's something you have to face and will make you stronger in the long run.
Being afraid is alright, because didn't anybody ever tell you? Fear is a superpower.
And that's what makes Doctor Who's horror so unique. It's not only about the monsters that lurk in the dark, it's about growing up, facing the unknown, and realising the darkest fears often come from within ourselves. This show isn't just about what's hiding under the bed, it's about what's happening under your skin. If you look closely, Doctor Who has always been obsessed with body horror, not in a gory way that would make it a 15 or an 18 plus show, but in something deeper and more psychological. It's about losing control of what makes you you. Because in this show, the real fear isn't death, I think it's change. Take the Cybermen. They don't kill you, they upgrade you. They take away your fear, your pain and your sadness, everything that makes you human, and they replace it with cold efficiency. They're not monsters in the traditional sense. They're what happens when someone decides emotion is a bug and not a feature. When the desire to perfect ourselves turns into the urge to erase ourselves. This is what makes the Cybermen so chilling, because who hasn't at some point wanted to stop feeling, or wanted to change how they looked? The Cybermen are that fantasy taken to its logical extreme. They are the nightmare version of progress. The human race improved until there's nothing human left. Then there's the gas mask child in Series 1. It's such a simple line, but it's unforgettable. It's said so eerily in almost a whisper. This story takes something comforting and twists it until it's terrifying, which is a common theme in basically every episode of this show. The mask isn't a prop, it's a part of his face. The fear that something as pure as a child's need for comfort could become monstrous when the world gets cruel enough. Then we have our favourite tentacle-faced aliens called the Ood. They're not violent or evil, they're servants and they just want to help. But that's what makes them so unsettling, because their servitude isn't a choice, it's engineered into their whole race. Their song, their thoughts and their voices literally removed from their bodies and sold as a product. Even regeneration, the show's most celebrated idea, carries that same unease. It's meant to be hopeful, a second chance, a fresh start, but if you think about it too long, it's horrifying. Imagine dying, but not dying, but instead you wake up as someone else. Same memories and the same trauma, but a different face, different hands, different heartbeat, different other things. Every regeneration is both a rebirth and a funeral, and the Doctor remembers all of them. The audience cheer for the transformation of the new actor, the new era, the new showrunner, but for the Doctor it's another identity lost, and another self gone, and then the question lingers, how many times can you change before there's nothing left of the original? Doctor Who dresses its horror in sci-fi metaphors, but it's always the same primal fear. What if I stop being me? And maybe that's why the Doctor is the scariest being in the entire show. For decades, the Doctor has been cast as the ultimate hero, eccentric, clever and compassionate. The trickster who always finds another way and never uses violence to get his way, most of the time. He's the traveller who saves planets with nothing but a screwdriver. He also does some really good speeches now and again.
Could you all just stay still a minute, because I am talking!
But when you take off the mask and rip away the charm and the bow ties, what are you really left with? Not a quirky human. Well, not really, but a being older than civilization itself. A shapeshifter who has the power to rewrite time, commands physics and walks away from destructions as casually as someone makes a cup of tea. When all of these good factors of him are removed, he looks much less of a saviour. The unsettling truth is that the Doctor just looks human. They talk like us, laugh like us, and, even eat like us. And sometimes, in some cases, they pretend to live like us. But they don't age like a normal human. And now that the Doctor is very, very old and has had at least 15 different incarnations, you notice that Even some of his closest friends have to stop and think, do I really know who I'm travelling through time and space with? There's been many instances throughout the show. For example, Martha in season 3. She leaves from her willingness to do other things, away from the Doctor. On the flip side of that, take Clara Oswald. She loved the Doctor so much that in the end, she was basically a reflection of the Doctor. And by the end of series 9, that got her killed. Of course, then the Doctor pulled her out of her own time stream to live, but she's technically dead, but technically not. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. Maybe I could do a full video essay on Heaven Sent and Hellbent. But there's a reason why the Doctor's name inspires fear across the galaxy. Entire alien civilizations in the show talk about the oncoming storm, and even his oldest foe, the Daleks, call him their predator. And when you think of it like this, some of the darkest moments, a lot of times, they come from the main character themselves. From the moments you see their masks slip, then you see what an ancient, near-immortal being with infinite power might actually do. Every once in a while, the Doctor steps too far. And when they do, the results aren't just dramatic, they're catastrophic, you could say. Going back to talking about the waters of Mars, there's a theme here, if you can't tell. It is one of my favourite episodes of the entire show. But that whole arc is such a good character study on when the Doctor goes too far. The main plot point of the episode is the 10th Doctor becoming a godlike entity that can change the laws of time without thinking he won't face consequences. But he does. When he saves Bowie Base 1, he drops them back on Earth, but then crowns himself the Time Lord victorious, which Adelaide Brooke, who is the other main character in that episode, sort of beats him up verbally for and challenges. And then after that conversation, he realises what he's done. He's changed time, but has he? Because his actions deliberately caused Adelaide to go into her house and pull the trigger on herself. And at that point, he's gone too far. The crazy thing about this show is that it gets us, the viewer, to trust the Doctor and that he'll save the day. But the show is also brave enough to ask, what happens when that trust breaks? What happens when the Saviour suddenly feels alien, unknowable, or even dangerous? Because the Doctor isn't the monster under the bed. He's the one that tucks you in and says everything is going to be okay, and then walks off into the night. And it's quite ironic that the person who saves the day easily has the power to ruin and destroy the day. Some of Doctor Who's most controversial episodes aren't just scary. They try to tell a message, whether that's about climate change, survival, or humanity itself. And when these things clash with a very message-heavy script, it's safe to say things can get a little messy. The first episode I want to talk about that didn't hit the mark is the Series 8 episode, Kill the Moon. This episode begins like a normal horror story. A group of abandoned astronauts land on the moon and are hunted down by killer spiders one by one. But the culmination of the episode is that the moon is an egg. The Doctor removes himself from the moral dilemma of the episode entirely and leaves Clara and a bunch of other humans to make a massive choice about the fate of the Earth and this unborn moon creature. Suddenly, this stops being a horror story and turns into more of an allegory. For what, though, you may ask? Well, that's the question. Is it about abortion? Is it about choice? Is it about leadership? And now we get on to another episode in the Jodie Whittaker era called, drumroll please, Orphan 55. The lowest rated episode on IMDb, even worse than Kill the Moon. Because I guess at least Kill the Moon, we got this great scene at the very end.
Tell me what you knew, Doctor, else I'll smack you so hard you regenerate.
Orphan 55 wants to be a horror thriller. You've got a resort under siege, monstrous villains, and a cast that are being picked off one by one, and a woman screaming for Benny every 5 minutes.
Benny! Benny, where are you? Just bring the dregs.
On paper, it's the perfect Doctor Who scarefest, but when it's revealed that the creatures are mutated humans from the effects of climate change, the episode grinds into message mode, and everything just goes to a halt. Climate change, pollution, and extinction, all critical issues, but it's so poorly executed. There could have been so many better ways to go about this. The execution is very heavy-handed, and the horror is neutered by exposition and awkward pacing. By the end of it, the Doctor is basically just delivering a monologue straight to the camera. And you know, the Doctor has had some incredible monologues and speeches in the past, but this one, it just wasn't good. Be the best of humanity, which is a noble statement, don't get me wrong, but this message drowns out the fear that the episode's been trying to build up to. Quite poorly, but it's still tried. And the monsters became background noise to a lecture. The dregs could have been terrifying, but they were rushed, underlit, and strangely unmemorable. The episode doesn't push the horror far enough, and it doesn't trust the audience to carry its message. But where these two episodes get it wrong, there are episodes that get it right. Where Kill the Moon and Orphan 55 struggle to send a message, the Zygon two-parter succeeds because it understands how fear operates. Shapeshifters that hide among us. Don't make that joke. This isn't 2020 anymore. Anyone could be one. Your friends, your work colleague, your family, or even you. And that is part of why the horror in this episode is so well done. Because it isn't body horror, it's identity horror. And this relates back to the point I made earlier, where this episode tackles that at its core, because, you know, think of how the Doctor changes via regeneration. Every few years, literally loses their identity and becomes a completely new person with a new face. The fear here isn't a jump scare. It's in the slow realization that the person you're sitting next to, or the people beside you, aren't who they really say they are. It's the everyday turned sinister once again. In the climax of the episodes, and when the Doctor steps in between the two sides, human and Zygon, he delivers what's potentially one of the best moments in all of New Who, and one of the greatest scenes in the whole show, and Peter Capaldi's defining moment as the Doctor, the anti-war speech. It's been watched millions of times. It's still so relevant at least 10 years later. That's the horror. Not the monsters, not the transformations, but the consequences of conflict and war. Unlike other message episodes, this one, I feel, earns its message. It lets horror do the emotional groundwork so that when the Doctor speaks, the audience feel the stakes. It invites every person watching this to just think, as long as the writer trusts its audience and their intelligence. Now, I just want to bring our minds to Season 1 of Doctor Who, as in Season 14, Season 1 Doctor Who, not Series 1. And there was an episode that stood out to me in that whole season, and that episode is none other than 73 Yards. This episode has a clear message and a clear aspect of horror similar to the good Doctor Who episodes that utilise it. At first glance, it's simple and even small. A woman appears exactly 73 yards away from Ruby Sunday, who takes a very centre role. This woman never speaks, but stands exactly 73 yards away from her at all times, no matter where she is. Wherever Ruby goes, this mysterious figure follows. And when others try to approach her, they recoil in fear and run away, including her own stepmother. They whisper, and then they vanish from Ruby's life until she is completely and utterly alone.
Come on, Nick! Come on, change the lock! Somebody come on!
This is what happens when Doctor Who doesn't separate the horror from the meaning, and it fuses them. And similar to the Zygon two-parter, 73 Yards trusts its audience. The fear isn't about survival. In this case, it's about isolation and being completely separated from everyone in the world. At the end of the day, this episode is about the invisible systems that decide who gets heard and who gets silenced. What's scary about this episode isn't the woman always following her. Instead, it's how easily people turn away and how fast the world actually forgets you. And the episode hints at something bigger. A Nigel Farage-like politician rising to power in the background, feeding on fear and division. Sound familiar? But even with this, it doesn't turn into a lecture. It just lets the dread seep in the background, like radiation. The real horror isn't supernatural. Instead, it's social, it's psychological, and it's the feeling of something has gone wrong, but no one will tell you why. By the end, Ruby isn't given closure to any of this. Just silence. Not those silence, if you're wondering. Time passes and life moves on. Doctor Who has always been about monsters, but the scariest ones aren't the Daleks or the Cybermen. They're the kind that isolates us, without us ever noticing it's happening. That's not just horror in Doctor Who, that's horror as Doctor Who.